Good morning and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to video 3 on our series on employment and the employment process. Today's content is going to briefly go over a couple different things. We've already talked about things to consider before you consider getting a job, right? Now we're going to look at some things to do when it comes to the interview process. Okay, so we've already submitted our application. We filled it out. We've submitted it. Okay, and now we're ready and thinking about the interview. And we've been given an interview opportunity. All right. Now, some places might give you an interview on site. In other words, when you turn it in or turn in your application to the hiring manager or the person in charge of the hiring process, you might be given an on-site interview right then and there. And if that's the case, you might need to start thinking about prepping how you're going to answer certain questions. All right. So here's the deal. All right. Before the interview itself, you need to think about preparation. Okay. Because preparation is important. All right. So how do you prepare for the interview? Well, there's a couple different things. All right. First thing, you got to have knowledge of the business. All right. Pretty much saying, hey, it's more than, okay, you're McDonald's and you're in the food business. I know how to make a P&J sandwich. All right. Well, okay. Do you know and understand that you'll be working very quickly, serving a lot of people because McDonald's is the biggest, largest, and busiest fast food chain there is in the local market? Okay. Or if you're at Chick-fil-A, right? Are you prepared to know that they have certain standards and certain things that you need to say, right? And certain things that you need to do. Like when somebody says thank you, you say my pleasure instead of you're welcome. Are you prepared with that? You got to have knowledge of the business. Okay. If you're in the it's like you're applying for a job at Olive Garden. You know they're a higher end chain restaurant, so you'll need to present yourself in a more presentable fashion and be prepared to be a little bit more polite in that kind of restaurant type environment, right? So you got to have knowledge of the position, okay? That doesn't mean you have to know it intimately because you're going to have and give you on the job training, right? But if you're going to be working the crew and in the back area of McDonald's, you got to at least know that you'll be dealing with hot items, grease, hamburgers, so on and so forth. Now, if you're thinking fast food's not for me and you want to do a waitress, well, at least have some knowledge about basic waitressing, how to read numbers on the charts, see what's available, so on and so forth, okay? Or if in the future, when you graduate school, you're looking at getting your job and you apply at a technical support place to work technical support over the phone and you're tech supporting and troubleshooting computers, you might need to know a little bit about that job. All right. So what skills do you want to focus on that complement the opportunity? If you're someone who's knowledgeable about computers, and I'm not talking just posting things on social media, I'm talking about knowledge about troubleshooting. That's something you want to focus on. Okay. If you have high computer aptitude and understand the basics of computers, but you're not sure with that, if they provide training, that's something you want to focus on. Okay. So what skills do you bring? All right, fellas. Maybe if you don't bring a lot of skills, but you're going to be working in a warehouse and you're fine with warehouse work, are you strong? Are you able to lift the items? Do you stay healthy? All right. Can you support lifting the weight that they require? Okay. Ladies, if you're not interested in that kind of thing, if you want to sit behind the phone or if you're wanting to work somewhere that requires certain skill sets, okay, are you prepared to do those tasks? Okay. You got to start thinking about those. All right. Additionally, if you haven't, bring or provide samples of your work as needed. All right. I remember when I was doing those car audio installs that I did when I was younger, and I was showing off the stereo that I had built, and one of the guys came up to me and says, hey, I run a shop in so-and-so, and we're looking for a new installer. Would you like to come work for us? And he gave me a job offer on the spot. And I told him, look, I'm already working for somebody else, but I really appreciate the opportunity. He saw a sample of the work and was like, wow, that's really good, right? If you're going to work for a newspaper somewhere as a journalist, bring a sample of your work and you're writing it, okay? Then you want to make sure that you also present yourself accordingly. That's your physical appearance, okay? That means you got to dress appropriately and professionally, all right? Like Mr. C's attire right now, polo shirts might be applicable for certain jobs, but you also don't want to overdo it as well, okay? I got a little story for that I'll tell you here in just a few minutes, okay? Absolutely no questionable materials or images, none whatsoever, okay? Jeans, t-shirts, sandals are generally a turnoff, okay? That means they're probably not going to be interested once they see you like that, right? And then you want to generally, depending on the job that you're applying for, cover any tattoos, piercings that would otherwise be considered unprofessional. Again, that depends on the job itself. Okay, if you're working in the back at Chick-fil-A or McDonald's, a little bit more acceptable, right? However, if you're going to be in the sales department, you want to make sure that you're, presented accordingly. Now, I remember a time when I interviewed for my first job at McDonald's. This is when I was 16 years old, and I was told to dress appropriately, so I made sure that I wore a pressed shirt, a tie, black pants, kind of like what you would go to church in or go to somewhere a little bit more formal in. And when the job interview was done, I remember asking the lady, she asked me, do you have any questions for me? And I was like, yeah, how did I do? Because I didn't know. I didn't know if I did good job or had job skills. And she was like, is this your first job interview? I'm like, yeah. And she's like, wow. I was not expecting that by the way you handled the questions. I'm like, well, thank you. She says, but if you could change anything, you're a little overdressed for the occasion. And I says, well, what do you mean? She says, well, most people when they apply and interview with us, they're usually in a polo shirt and maybe some khakis. So that told me what I need to know for the next go around, right? If there was a next go around. Obviously, I got the job, right? So when you get there, you want to be early and prompt, all right? And as Mr. Cooper likes to say, on time is late and early is on time, right? So you want to make sure that you arrive there because you got to be respectful of the time of the manager who you're working for or the business that you're working for. So you also want to be polite and respectful to everyone you meet, all right, in the interview area because they might be doing a lot of interviews that day. So you want to be polite and respectful so that you get along, right? Show those personal skills that are applicable in the business world. All right. During the interview itself, all right, introduce yourself, shake a hand, okay? Make sure that you make eye contact. Hi, my name is, and they may do the same. They may do that to you first. And if that's the case, well, fine, reply that. Look them straight in the eye, okay? Shake hands even if the interviewer does not offer to. Now, obviously, in the COVID era, all right, you want to be careful with that. But, just maybe mirror what they do. And, just do something that's socially appropriate, right? But usually the go-to is shaking hands. It's okay, right? Now, when you shake hands, make sure it's a firm, but not like holding a vice grip in your hand, right? Not clenching. You want to maintain their eye contact, right? Don't be looking around. And then release when the interview does, all right? So release the grip when the interviewer does. And I think the video showed you or will show you something about that, all right? You want to speak clearly. You don't want to mumble, okay? Now, Mr. C knows that he speaks fast. So at an interview, I tend to slow things down a little bit, right? So you want to speak clearly and avoid unfamiliar or unprofessional words, right? I'll give you an example. Teachers use a lot of acronyms in the education world. So if I was to go interview somewhere else, I would avoid using those kinds of weird acronyms, right? And then unprofessional words, you guys should know what those mean, right? And then wait to be offered a seat. Don't just assume one, okay? Sit attentively and maintain good posture, It's okay to relax. It's okay to mirror. Mirror means if someone is sitting uptight and all studious-like, sit uptight and all studious-like, and that's fine. If the interviewers are a little bit more relaxed, then you can relax as well, all right? But always face the interviewer to show them that you're on touch. You don't want to be sitting like this. You don't want to be looking around talking when you're doing the interview, that sort of thing, all right? So always face the interviewer. All right, during your interview, you want to maintain a positive tone because sometimes they're going to offer hard questions, right? So you want to maintain a positive tone always, right? You want to maintain a positive attitude and maintain positive body language from the beginning to the end, even during hard questions. Now, I'm going to give you a clue on some of the questions that are typically asked. And how do I know these? Well, one, they're on the internet. Two, I used to ask these myself during the interview and when making hiring decisions for certain employers. Okay. So, questions you might hear. Tell me a little bit about yourself. All right. Don't go into a life story. Just tell me a little bit. What makes you think that you're ready for the job? That kind of thing, right? Why are you interested in working for our company? Which aspects of your previous work did you find most challenging? That's a tough question. Tell me about a challenge you faced when dealing with someone you worked with and how did you resolve it? What they're looking for is they're looking for those soft skills. How are you handling conflict, right? Are you aggressive? Are you not aggressive, right? Are you willing to work as a team, or is it all about you? They're trying to figure these things out to see if you fit the company, okay? What would you consider to be a strength of yours? All right, here's a good one that you'll usually see, all right, especially for your first few jobs. What would you consider to be a weakness? Now, the most appropriate response is not going to be, I ain't got no weakness. No, no, no. Think of something that you are weak at, okay, and then turn it into a positive. Example, before I got into teaching, okay, Mr. C would say, hey, I can sometimes be a little rough on the outside when you first meet me, or kind of standoffish, but once people get to know me, I'm a little bit more friendlier. And I says, I'm working on that to try to be a little bit more friendly, a little bit more smiley, more positive when people meet me, as opposed to being so off-putting. And it's something I continually work on. That's what I used to say. All right. So, that might be considered turning around a weakness into a positive. Okay. Here's another good question that you might ask. Tell me why you think you would be a good fit for this position. All right. Again, they're looking to see how you might fit the role. They know what they're looking for. Okay. What are your professional goals in the next 2 years or the next 5 years? You might want to prep for some of these questions, by the way, right? What salary or pay are you looking for? Now, obviously, you might document that in the application, but they're confirming things, right? Now, if you go and walk them off the board with, $15 an hour, and the minimum wage is currently at $9 an hour, they're going to look at you and go, what makes you qualified for that, right? But if the minimum wage is $15 an hour and you're looking for $15 an hour, tell them 15, okay? So there you go. What motivates you? Please, please, please don't say money, okay? Do something intrinsic, doing well, performing well, trying to get forward to the next steps of life, those kinds of things, right? Setting yourself up for a foundation as a young adult, those sort of things, right? And how would your friends describe you? Again, those are typical questions asked during the interview, and you want to start thinking about how you might answer those questions in preparation for the interview itself. All right, so what do interviewers, like myself, I used to be, right, look for during the interview? Well, we're looking at dress and general appearance, all right? Are you a good fit for the business? We're looking at eye contact. We're looking at, do you have any kind of assertiveness or confidence? Remember, again, it really depends on the job here, right? It really depends on the job. If you're working in a warehouse somewhere, dress and general appearance might be, we might be willing to slack or lack on certain things, right? Do you take pride in your achievements and pride in your previous work, all right? Do you have open-mindedness and dedication in your prior work? Are you dedicated to the work that you do, right? Are you willing to learn things? Are you willing to improve upon old ways, okay? But that's a really important thing, because in some businesses, things are always changing, okay? You can't just say, oh, I like the way it used to be, all right? It may not be a good way to do that. It may not be what employers are looking for. Do you show creativity in decision-making or solving problems? Again, it really depends on the job, okay? What skills and qualifications do you have? Do you display reasonable interest in the job? What experiences do you have? And do you have an ability to maybe change the company image? That's a huge one, right? Do you have any growth potential for the future, if that's something that you're interested in? And what's the overall impression of you? Again, the employers know what they are looking for, okay? So this is definitely something that you want to think about as what they might be looking for. So plan for these in advance. All right. So what do you do when the interview is over? People just say, okay, we're done. Goodbye. Okay. And that's fine. You can do that, but I don't recommend it. All right. You want to show continued interest in the job if you're still interested in the job. Okay. So at the conclusion of the interview, it's okay to ask what the next step in the process is. All right. And you could do that by saying, hey, when will the hiring decision be made? Okay. What is the next step in the process? If I don't hear from you by Friday, may I contact you? Hey, those are all great questions, all right? So, when will the hiring decision be made? Sometimes they might tell you, we'll plan on making a decision by Friday, okay? Or we may plan on making a decision before the start of the next week. Okay, all right, that's fine. We plan on making a decision a month from now. Okay, that works for me, all right? What is the next step in the process? Some typical answers you might hear is, we'll call you. Okay, and once we call you, we will go from there. Fantastic. Leave it at that. Okay. And you might say, hey, if I don't hear from you by, and you set the deadline, right? If I don't hear from you by Friday, may I contact you? And they might tell you, no, we will contact you. And that's fine. That means they don't want follow-up, and that's fine. Reconfirm any contact information, and then thank them for their time and consideration. All right? That's perfectly fine. And then after the interview, as you saw in one of the videos, right, you want to go ahead and give them a follow-up within a week. All right, just call them. Hey, remember me? I talked to you at a job interview, or for the job interview for the whatever job you interviewed for, right? And I just wanted to see how things were going, and if you've been able to make a decision yet. And they might tell you, hey, we decided to go another direction, and that could be fine. Another direction means that they may have hired somebody else, or they may have decided not to fulfill that position based off of who applied for the job. That's fine, right? But that's fine. Unless you're told we will contact you, make sure that you can follow up with email, with a phone call, even a visit there back on site to speak with the person. Again, it all depends on the job. You have to make that call. All righty? All right, so on our questions, you got some things that will require some critical thinking. All right, on slide, there's 2 slides here, okay? So don't forget, hey, there's 2 slides. There's a 3A and a 3B, all right? So you got some critical thinking skills here, and then you should be able to answer that, but you might have to think a little bit about that because I may or may not have said anything directly about that, so you have to use your critical thinking skills, all right? You can look back on your notes and look back at the presentation to help you with the next series of questions. And then I want to know what you think are extremely important during the interview. What actions do you think are extremely important? All right. Then there are 3 more questions. One says name 4 questions that you might be asked during an interview. Again, you can go back to the notes for that if you need to. And then same thing for the next question. And then just give me a true or false. All right. And you should be able to apply those accordingly. So we'll catch you on the next video and hopefully wrap things up from there. We'll see you on the next go around.